Shall we get started? I know that after this session, we all need to walk over to watch opera, so I want to make sure we have a nice concentrated 40 minutes or so, and we can go a little bit early so you all can get great seats. My name is Rajeshri Pimpalkare, and I'm super excited to be here to talk to you all. I joined Intuit just a little over a year ago, and I have the role as the Director of Partner Solutions in the Intuit Developer Group. The easiest way to explain my role is I lead a team of a cross-functional team with product managers, solution architects, engineers, QA people, and project managers to really find the unmet needs of QuickBooks customers in working with some of our key partners that are also offering great solutions to small businesses. The other part of my job is we actually do it as a third-party developer inside of Intuit. So we are just like you. We are just employed by Intuit internally. And as part of every integration, every solution we build, we also move the platform forward. So the way I think about it is we do it first so you can do it better. Here are some of the partners that we have worked with in the last 1 year that this team has been in existence. Revel, Shopify, BigCommerce, and so on. These are the partners where we were trying to get Intuit QuickBooks customers with a payments account with us to be able to effortlessly list their products on e-commerce sites or at POS with a POS solution. We also have done data integrations where transactions from our partners like American Express Open and PayPal and Square can flow into QuickBooks, what we call automagically, without the users having to do anything. And a lot of learnings we have had are in using the QuickBooks Payments API and the QuickBooks Accounting APIs, and we are continuing our work as we move forward towards expanding the ecosystem. So here are some of the things we have learned. It's actually a great segue to go from the great panel that we saw in the last tech track, where you learned a lot of interesting ways that developers have brought their applications to the QuickBooks platform and been successful with it. So here is just going to be another take at it. So the very first thing I would start with is every integration or every partner, every solution with a partner, we look at it just as an extension of Intuit product. What do I really mean by that? We look at the different phases in order to make sure whatever we are building will drive some customer benefit. We know exactly why we need to build it. That's the ideate phase. So you target a specific customer problem and figure out how to solve it. Define is the phase where you say small businesses and their accountants, how would they want to use this type of functionality along with QuickBooks? Then we build it like you would build any great product using all the engineering excellence practices. And then define, build, launch, that little loop in there is where we use the lean startup methodology. So we try to get the core functionality into the hands of our users as quickly as possible, and then we iterate with user feedback. And I use the term user on purpose. How many accountants in the room? We heard this morning, we heard Brad say that 60% of small businesses use accountants. And what the other statistics that he said was much more important was 80% of small business, or small business success is 80% more likely when they use an accountant. So when we develop integrations, we want to make sure not only that it addresses the needs of one specific small business, but it also is intuitive for accountants to use when they might use the same integration for multiple of their users. And lastly, in the grow phase, this is where you have built an integration or a solution, it works great, you still need to support it, you need to still maintain it best in class, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've learned there as well. Hopefully all day you've heard various people talk about customer benefit. Scott Cook came and talked about how critical it is to improve our customers' lives in everything we do. You actually heard Avi come and say something that was really so honest. It was wonderful to hear him say that, because 1 year ago when I joined Intuit, we were not yet super focused on customer benefit. We're still measuring how many users do we have. We're still measuring what revenue are we making. We're still measuring, are our users staying with us for a long period of time. We hadn't quite honed in on the concept of customer benefit. So customer benefit is the real improvement in the customer's life, not just in your bottom line, that allows them to use your product and love your product. And there are 3 key things to remember. In order to identify a customer benefit, you first need to gain deep customer empathy. You need to really understand what the pain point is, and you need to really understand what can you do to solve it. Then you need to declare it. What does that mean? We, of course, saw some of the panel members that were a team of 1. But most of us do work with more people. It is as critical for the engineer and for the QA person and for the project manager to deeply connect to the customer benefit we are delivering in order to make sure the entire product and all aspects of it are developed with that in mind. And lastly, you want to measure it, because just intention is not good enough. Data is critical. So here's some of what we've learned as we went about. You looked at some of the partners that we've developed integrations with, either by building it ourselves or helping our partners build those. And as we were looking at those, some of the customer pain points that we heard was there is no small business that actually gets into the business because they want to do accounting. Even accountants do not enjoy entering transactions or chasing their customers so that they can get all their information into their books. Accountants, as well as small businesses, would rather have all their data flow in directly. Small businesses spend upwards of 8 to 10 hours every week just in order to make sure all their money flowing in and money flowing out is reflected accurately in their books. What if you could save that time? What if the small businesses could, instead of inputting this data, could spend that time in actually growing their business? What if the accountants didn't spend time talking to their customers about, I don't have this data from you and that other thing needs to be there, and instead talk about what they could be doing to grow their business? So that's the problem we are trying to solve. To quickly go over again, this is a slide that you've seen hopefully a couple times today. These are the customer benefits we at Intuit are targeting as we look at growing the ecosystem and as we look at filling critical capability and product needs for our customers. Accounting is done. This is where you want all the data to flow in automatically into QuickBooks. You don't just want the data to flow in. You actually want to be able to help our customers make better decisions with that data. So gaining those insights from that data are super critical. And then lastly, for every business, you heard Robert say this morning, it's money, money, money. He said he's not good at math, but he's good at money. And every small business needs to be good at money. They need to get their invoices paid quickly, they need to have access to funding, and they need to be able to pay their vendors just as quickly. And we can't do all of this without you guys. Once you have a clear customer benefit identified, the next piece that we look at and that you can think about is, okay, now that you know you have a problem to solve, how do you go about solving it? So as you think of the workflows of how your users are going to use those integrations, we look at it in three different parts. The first part is how do you make sure you're onboarding the right users? You heard that on apps.com, we have about 600,000 visits every month of customers coming and looking at their apps. So designing a good onboarding flow starts there. It starts by designing the app card the right way, having the right information on it, having the right videos that explain the benefits, and stating what your connection or what your integration will solve, but also what it will not solve. The other part of onboarding the right users is to make sure the connection flow to QuickBooks is as seamless as possible for all types of users. So users that are using your app and QuickBooks together, so these are joint users. Users that you hope to acquire from QuickBooks. So these are the users that are going to come to apps.com and say, oh, I love this app, let me go see how I can connect to it. And also users of your app that you want to send to QuickBooks just so that they are more sticky with your application. So those are kind of the different parts in which we think of onboarding. Then the first time use, once they have connected to QuickBooks, that needs to be guided. And what that means is during that first time use, you want to educate your users through messaging or through step-by-step process as to exactly what to expect and where to expect the data to flow, where to expect to go for insights, and so on. Because that's when you're truly starting the process of engaging deeply with that user. And once you have that, the ongoing use, which is where most of the user engagement is going to happen, should be intuitive, it should be automated, and it should be seamless. So as far as possible, it shouldn't take time. It should just give the users they want, maybe a daily summary, maybe an email, but really know how the users may want to get that data and build for that. So I know that we always hear for everything, make things as simple as possible. But I've always believed this statement from Einstein: make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. And here is an example of what that means. When you design an integration, it's just like a feature of your product. It is not a one and done. It's not something you can just say, OK, I know what to do. I built it. It's going to work. That's called designing for the happy path. And that almost always gets you in trouble a few users down the road. So in every integration, especially when you're integrating to QuickBooks, accuracy is critical because this is financial data. And if you do nothing else, you should never mess up your users' books. You need to build for scale, security, and supportability. We heard that QuickBooks already has over 1 million users, so you're going to have access to those number of users. And you will have the problem of success, right? The challenge of success is when you build something that may not scale. So think of it right from the beginning. By definition, an integration is built on 2 platforms. And none of the platforms out there guarantee 100% uptime. So you want to make sure your integration takes care of that and designs for resilience of those downtimes. And eventually, this is just something I have to say, but I'm sure you all know about it, end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing from a user standpoint, from an accountant standpoint, from a small business owner standpoint, is crucial. And you just don't do it once. You need to do it every time your application changes or QuickBooks changes, just so that you make sure it's always working. One of the techniques we use, I talked about lean startup. One of the things we try to do is we first build the core functionality that delivers business benefit and get it out into some users' hands right away. And that might be 5 users or 15 users or 20 users. But we use an approach to make sure whatever we are building actually solves a problem, and then we keep expanding that group of users to make sure we can tackle a bigger and bigger user group. So we typically think of those phases as beta, soft launch, general availability, and go-to-market. And with beta, with an accounting product, beta is still functionally accurate. It's not going to do things that the user will have to undo and so on, but it may be limited in functionality. So this is where we'll typically white glove the user onboarding. We work with them directly. We see how they're using the product, and we see what else they need. And beta is a phase that typically, if you really designed your workflows right, it lasts 2 to 3 weeks, and you get the proof of concept that you're looking for, so you can go to a wider group of users in what we call a soft launch. And this is where you want to see, can the user just come to the integration and be able to onboard? This is where you might find any kind of friction points in what does it take to onboard users, and so on. General availability is where we look at it as it's launched on the App Store, it's available to everybody to sign up. And this is where we make sure it works in terms of scale, and it's something that we can support and so on before the marketing campaigns launch. This is something that's really helped us, and it's something we learned the hard way in the last year after the first integration or two, where we just realized that we put something out there that solved a problem but didn't really solve it for everybody. I think a nice saying I learned is one size doesn't fit anyone. And that's, I think, key to remember, right? So know who you're targeting and go slowly, and that's a great way to succeed. I thought I would share an example of a specific thing we learned as we were developing one of the integrations. So this example is from the integration we did with PayPal. And the whole idea is we have a large overlapping user group with PayPal, and all of these users want to see their transactions flow in automatically into QuickBooks. Now, as we designed it, PayPal has PayPal accounts. The way customers use PayPal accounts is they move money periodically from their PayPal account to their bank account. But for long periods of time, the money might still be held in the PayPal account. So as we designed the original integration, we planned to create an account called PayPal Funds Transfer because we knew that some users move their money into multiple bank accounts. And there was no way to clearly let the user see or get insights into how does their business look like from the way they're getting it from PayPal. What we realized is we were really designing for the 10% of the users that are moving their money into multiple bank accounts. And for most of the other users, they were actually had their one bank account that they always swept money into already connected to QuickBooks. This actually resulted in some of their income getting double counted. So that's pretty terrible. Imagine coming to tax time and finding out your income's actually double. So this is where we actually tried to solve for a really complicated case, but we really didn't need to do that. And the way we fixed it is just to give them an option. So we made a default, and in this case, it shows up as yes, but the default is to say, no, you don't need a specific account, but if you want it, you can create it. And that just gives flexibility. So one of the things you learn as you develop your integration, whether it's with accounting data or with customer data and so on, you learn that your users will want optionality in a lot of things, because accounting is not the same for everybody, and everybody is using it differently. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about data. I heard this morning Jessica Alba say that when they launched the website 30 minutes before she went to Good Morning America, it was not tested. And that just made me freeze right there, right? What a nightmare. But I think it's not just about testing and so on. One of the key things is, as you test the first product that you put out there, you are able to make sure everything just works. But once the product's out there, you need to learn with data. The first time you launch, you can make sure functionality is complete. But beyond that, you need to look at data. Data also helps because once you have usage of your product, you can actually fight opinions very, very well with data. I think, as they say, in God we trust, everybody else must bring data. So here are some of the things we do in terms of what we do with data. We use data to monitor health of the integration. And this is something we have at launch. Before the first customer gets their hands on the integration, we have all of our integrations logged and monitored, and we have these beautiful Splunk dashboards. Some of the folks from my team are in here, and they've built some of these dashboards. So this is a dashboard that says it's about accounting data integration, and it's talking about, in a week's time, how many transactions got pushed into QuickBooks. That's a pretty cool number. You can also see that there is some seasonality. The bars there on the left-hand chart go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So it allows us to understand when are the total transactions getting pushed and what are the weekly changes in there. So in this case, we see that the transactions pushed are on the left-hand side. We had about 380,000 transactions pushed in that 1 week from 4,800 active companies. The right-hand chart is also interesting because it tells you what type of transactions are users pushing in. And it gives you better insight into your users. It's not just about maintaining the integration. It's also about understanding if you were thinking of doing a specific feature on, let's say, bringing in expenses. How useful would that be? How many people are bringing in expenses versus sales versus customer information and so on? So these are all the positive indicators. We also look at what we call negative indicators. So we make sure we have a bar for all our integrations to keep error rates lower than 1% at one time. At all times. And we know one of the reasons for error rates, and I'm only showing, because I don't want to talk about the partner, I'm only showing the QBO downtimes. But think of it as if it was PayPal or Square or your application or another platform, you are going to have errors into your integration, creeping into your integration because of downtimes on both those platforms. And you want to actively monitor what are the things that are failing, what API calls are failing, what transactions are failing, and do you have fail-safe methods in order to take care of those? So in short, we track both positive and negative indicators in order to be successful. The positive ones to make sure we are growing, and if the number of transactions start dropping off, that's actually the real customer benefit, right? If you think about it, the number of transactions that got pushed in, those are the ones that did not have to be entered by hand, and that's how much time got saved for that integration. So this is how we also track for customer benefit. Some of the other things we do once we go into the grow phase, which is where the integration is done, it's best in class, it solves a customer problem, everybody loves it, but you want to make sure everybody keep loving it. Because your users might move another way, your platforms might move another way, and new needs might come up. So you want to make sure you can monitor the growth in a simple way. And the way we do it is we look at a couple of things. We look at the number of connections, and connections are users that are choosing to use this integration on a weekly basis. And we look at disconnections. Who are the users that actually connected with it but decided to stop using it? And we look at both of those indicators to see where is the balance, and is this something we want to go back and fix or go back and look at enhancing and so on. The other place where this is really useful is once we start marketing. As you can see, this little peak in there in the top graph is when we ran a specific marketing campaign, and in that week, number of connections went up. So it's really good to set a baseline and to be able to evaluate your different initiatives from a marketing standpoint and how they work. Another example I wanted to share with you is how do you assess, when you know there are connections and disconnections, how do you assess what is real and what is actionable and what is just seasonality or organic behavior of your customers. So here is an example. We use something called a cohort analysis. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. So we look at a week's worth of data and we dissect it deeper to really understand what's happening. So in this case, in this week, initially we had 670 users that connected to the integration. Out of those, about 34% disconnected, right? And the statistics kind of shows, okay, now about 66% are still with it, but the other ones are gone. Now, what we have found is a lot of times users that disconnect from an integration right after the first connection will actually come back. And the reasons are varied. Sometimes it's because they started connecting it and they realized they had to do 2 other steps before coming back and connecting this particular app. Sometimes they think it's a really good idea, but they want to do some more research. Sometimes it's because they feel like they should talk to their accountant first before they go and connect that app. And in many cases, they'll come back 2 or 3 days later and connect back up again. So in this particular week, we actually found closer to 1/3 of those users connected back to the app. So then when you do all of this analysis and when you go 10 days forward or so on, you know that about 78% of the users that are connecting are staying with the application, and the rest of them are actually disconnecting. And that's where you can go deeper into understanding why and whether you have a problem to solve or whether it's just regular behavior. Some of the questions we ask are, is this app for me? Did you, and if the answer is no, then maybe you need to tweak something in your onboarding use or in what you're telling them when they are choosing to connect with your app. Because you want to reduce the negative experiences as much as you can. Is there a specific reason? Did they stop using either QuickBooks or your app or what have you? And that gives you a little bit visibility. And in general, we try with every integration, we try to come up with what is a standard disconnect rate. And some of these things are just important once you are launched and growing to know when is it that your integration or your solution needs attention versus it's just run the business and continue to monitor it. So a lot of different information. But if I was to sum it all up, I would say most of all, make sure the integration is considered a feature of your product. It's not something that you do on the side. It's not something that you do in your spare time. It is something that is actually going to make sure your customers have a seamless experience. And as everybody moves to the cloud, it is just what's expected. It's no longer a delighter, per se. It's just the necessity. So it's key to keep that in mind. Focus on customer benefit. And that's what will give you durable success. Grow with data, not opinions. And I'm sure everybody here loves that. And then solve for SMBs and accountants. This is one that's really, really crucial. I think you heard some of the panel members say, and also others talk about how critical it is to get that accountant to give you feedback. Don't talk to your family and friends. Don't talk to the 3 small businesses that you solve for. One accountant multiplies the feedback of tens and hundreds of small businesses. So make sure you have accountants as your friends, but friends that will be honest with you and that will give you exactly the right type of feedback that you need. And with that, this is a lot of talk. Obviously, it's a topic that I'm super passionate about, and I'll be here to talk more. But I'm going to invite Peter Vogel, who's a solution architect on my team, and Corey Tan, who's an experienced designer, and they're going to actually walk you through one of the integration and learnings that we had in the past year. And we're going to need a minute or two just to reset the computers. But maybe, Corey, you can start with an intro.
Hi, I'm Corey. Yep, there's a question over there.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Yes, we do.
Any stats on that?
Not that I have off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're well in the 3 nines and a 3 or so, something along those lines.
No, I was just thinking about the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I understand.
I think the cool part is we get to be inside of Intuit and complain just like you to all our colleagues. And I hear you. Yeah.
The stats that you were showing.
Yeah, I think the stats that I showed were representative. They were not for a specific week and so on. But that's exactly, I think the point I would make, just putting myself in the third-party developer shoes, is you don't want to monitor the uptime and downtime. What you want to monitor is from an integration standpoint, how many times you had failed transactions and what are you going to do about those. Right, and I'm not answering so much from a platform standpoint, but for a payment transaction, for example, if you try a payment transaction through our payment APIs and it fails, you want to have a graceful exit. You want to let the user know that it will be tried again or so on. But to answer your original question, we absolutely do monitor it, and we internally as well try to make sure that there is the right amount of information going back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm a principal interaction designer in on the Partners integration team. I lead the overall user experience in the strategic integrations. So what does it really mean? Basically, I work closely with our partners, such as Fundbox, American Express, and PayPal, and bring their best product offerings into the QuickBooks platform. My team and I designed the experience of how people discover the partner features and how they are onboarded for the first time use and how they are continue using the features throughout the product. And to uncover people's pain points, we conduct research in people's homes, in their offices, stores, and also in the cars as they're heading into the field. And we call this practice the Follow Me Home. The goal is to uncover customers' pain points that we can solve and use this to guide the need for development. For anything we build, we try to identify the key customer benefits that this product and feature can deliver, and then we measure our tasks against this, the ability on deliver this kind of benefits. And I work with a lot of members in my team during this integration process, and here's Peter that I work the most with, and he's the best in the team, solution architect.
Hardly. Yeah, I'm a solutions architect. I've worked with many of you. I help our strategic partners integrate with QuickBooks and get the accounting right and make sure people's books are accurate. Okay,
so Peter and I are going to demo how we identify some of the key customer benefits, and we're going to conduct this in a follow me home format. And Peter will play the role as a customer, and he's a treasurer for a nonprofit. He uses QuickBooks and PayPal very heavily. So hi, Peter, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
So can you show me how you currently track incomes from PayPal?
Yeah, absolutely. So the format here is a little bit weird, but at home I have two screens side by side, so I pull one browser up with PayPal on the right-hand side and QuickBooks on the left-hand side. And pretty much, for every transaction, I drill into the transaction, and hopefully my login doesn't expire. And over here in QuickBooks, I say, well, I got some money, so I've got to create a sales receipt. And so I drill into the specific transaction here, get the details. And over here, hopefully that customer's already in there. That saves me a lot of time. If they're not, then I got to go add them. I want to make sure I've got their email addresses and so forth so that I can send them a thank you and stuff like that. Then I indicate the PayPal payment method is PayPal, and we have an auditor that needs to audit us once a year because we are a nonprofit. So he wants to be able to track the transactions in our system with the transactions from the bank statements and the PayPal statements and so forth. So I got to copy the reference number over, make sure the deposit's to the correct bank there, and in this case it is to the PayPal bank. And then, what was actually purchased. In this case, it's a membership, $40, good to go. Save and new or save and close, whichever's more appropriate, depending on the number of transactions I got to work with.
This seems like a lot of back and forth.
It is. It's a lot of copy and paste. It's very tedious.
And how long does it take you?
So with our typical transaction volume, this is just a demo here. Our typical transaction volume takes me a couple hours a week.
And how would you record fees from PayPal?
Yeah, that's the other side, and I'm still trying to decide which is quicker, doing the sales receipt and then the expense right away, because then I don't have to refresh in PayPal, and PayPal's really slow with the refresh and everything, and the fee information is right here. So I go and I create a new expense for that transaction as well. This time PayPal is the payee. And it does save me a little bit of time. QuickBooks remembers the last amount that I paid that payee, and since most of our transactions are the same amount, I'm good to go with that. I indicate the payment method is PayPal. I usually copy and paste the transaction ID again and put it in the memo field so that I can link those back and the auditor can link them back. I can put it in the reference number as well. Save and close, and I'm good to go with that expense.
That sounds like a lot of back and forth.
It's
awesome.
A lot of back and forth, and it's very tedious.
So if we come up with a way to help you import these PayPal transactions and record the fees and expenses automatically, would you find it helpful?
Absolutely. I will grovel at your product manager's feet to get into the beta.
Thank you, Peter. So thank you for your help, and I'm sure I can take this into my development team, and we will get in touch, and I'm sure we'll come up with a good product for you.
Awesome, thanks.
So as you can see, we have seen some of Peter's pain points. One is having to manually import the transaction data. That will take several hours a week. And then the second pain point is that by this, entering the data by hand, he may potentially incur some kind of accounting errors. So the customer benefits in this case are automation, data accuracy, and simplified tax preparations. So automation means that if we could import the data automatically, then Peter doesn't have to spend hours. And then the data accuracy is if we could import this data with the detailed transactions, then the data would be more accurate and free of human error. And then the last thing is breaking down the sales, the expenses, and then the taxes could help Peter and his accountant to simplify his tax preparation. So what happens next? Peter's going to play back his role as a solution architect. So we bring this to our development team, and they learn from our real customers' pain, and then they identify the key benefits. And in this case, they see that we can use the QuickBooks Accounting API to sync data with PayPal. So we came up with an app called Sync with PayPal. And Peter is going to demo the Sync with PayPal app, and along the way, I'm going to bring out 5 key takeaways from the learning process. This is not number 1. So the first one is your product needs to solve the specific needs of your users. Always keep the primary users in mind and potentially satisfy the secondary users.
Yep. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, so one of the key things here with the PayPal integration, we're going to be writing data directly to the books. And we only know the information that we have at setup time and the information that we get from PayPal and the PayPal API, which means we're going to do a really good job of putting detailed sales transactions into PayPal, but we're not going to do as good a job at tracking expenses and categorizing the expenses the way the bank feeds automatically categorizes things. So the first thing we want to do is when a user chooses PayPal is give them the right choice depending on how they use PayPal primarily. So here in bank feeds, when they say they've got a PayPal account, the first thing we ask them is, how do you primarily use PayPal? Are you using it to receive payments from customers? And if that's the case, Sync with PayPal is the right answer for you. Because if your primary use is that sales side, we're going to bring those sales transactions over in a much more detailed way than the bank feeds can, because bank feeds just knows date and amount and a brief description. On the other hand, if you're primarily using PayPal to pay for services and products from vendors, then bank feeds is probably a better answer for you, because it's going to help auto-categorize, it's going to remember your category choices, things like that. Now, over time, we obviously hope to improve the integration so that we can do a better job with that auto-categorization and so forth. But right now, helping the user to make the right choice for them and the way they use PayPal is really important. So we present those 2 choices to the user.
Okay, so the second takeaway is every business accounting process and chart of account is unique. What fits one business may not fit another. So we need to give our users choice to control how their data flow from one system into QuickBooks.
Take just a second here while we get the app setup going here and get connected to PayPal. But this is our core setup experience. The user needs to provide their credentials, treasurer, and grant the permission. Standard OAuth flow, obviously, with both sides, although we've got the QuickBooks OAuth hidden because we are an Intuit product. Whoops, unable to connect. Well, the demo gods are against me at the moment. But we do have a settings tab in the app that lets you define the various accounts that you use, your expense accounts, your bank account, and so forth. see if I can get to it this way. Very good. Okay, so the first thing, what's your bank account? PayPal is kind of unique in the payment space in that they've got that account that holds money for you pretty much indefinitely, and you treat that as a bank account as a small business. So we're going to ask you for your bank account, and we're going to default intelligently where we can. So we look at the list of bank accounts, and if you've already got a bank account with PayPal in its name, it's a pretty good indication that that's the right one to choose, so we'll default to that one. But we do let you choose the others if you need to, and if you don't have one, we'll let you create one. And then similarly, Rajashree mentioned how you want to record the transfers. So I can say, no, I don't want to track my transfers, or yes, I do want to use a funds transfer account. And coming later, we'll probably let you choose the bank account into which you're transferring so that it will match the bank account's bank feed. For now, I'll just leave it at no. And then another really important thing, especially when you're doing a lot of online transactions, things like that, if you're bringing over the unique details of every single customer that bought from the business once, you're going to be seriously polluting that customer's books. Not the books per se, but the list of customers. And the customer list will become unwieldy in QuickBooks for customers who really only bought from you once and are probably not going to come back. So we want to give users the right choice. I'm dealing with a bunch of members of a nonprofit, so I want to be sure that I am tracking those customer details. So I want to get all the customer details, but I have that choice to say, don't import the customer details. Just record it as one customer, PayPal customer, and I'll be happy. And we provide the details around that choice in the hint bar here. And then similarly, some people haven't been as good at keeping up their books and so forth. So we let you know, hey, we can import past transactions. And so we give you some choices to import during setup, historical transactions, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. I can actually go in and later choose to the day where I want to pull transactions over. But in this case, I've been keeping up. I've been manually doing this to my wife's great frustration. And so I'm okay there. I'll just say no history. And then finally, we're going to match your items carefully based on what's sold in PayPal, but sometimes something won't match up exactly. So what account do you want to use for those items that we can't match? What's your income account? So that's the PayPal income. And how do you want us to account for your fees? So I've got a credit card processing fees master account, and then under that, PayPal fees, I could add authorized.net fees, Intuit payments fees, etc., and I can keep track and it'll all roll up in the end for my business as to all the card processing fees. And then again, sales tax, we try to match it up based on what PayPal gives us, but if we can't, what do you want the default to be? And what do you want the payment method to be? And you can choose from any of the payment methods that are available in the user's QuickBooks. So we're actually doing a live query of QuickBooks to get at the data here to present to the user. And that's pretty much the setup process.
Okay, so the third takeaway is an effective integration should bring in the right business data, such as expenses, sales, transaction ID, etc., so that your users' books will always be up to date accurately, and as we call it, set it and forget it.
Awesome. Yeah, set it and forget it is critical. So this is, I've just switched. You'll notice the color changed in the background here. This is actually my live company file. I actually am the treasurer for the National Society of Radio Control Aerobatics, and I have here my real account and my PayPal account side by side, and I get this instant sense of security here. Here's my balance according to QuickBooks in PayPal, and here's my balance according to PayPal. 75, 51, 33 in both cases. I have this instant, warm, fuzzy feeling, all is right with the world. I haven't been in this company file in a month, but my data has been flowing, and my wife doesn't want to divorce me anymore because I'm spending all my time on my hobby stuff. So that's huge. I can actually get that instant sense of security from that. But more importantly, I can also look here and say, hey, what's been happening recently in my company file? I haven't been in here in a month. What's been happening? Well, I actually see some PayPal transactions that flew, one that just came in today, and I literally haven't been in here. And there it is, the PayPal item, USA membership. And because of the way our shopping cart works, every membership sale has in the description from PayPal a unique identifier in it. And so the matching algorithm gets defeated, so it defaults to that PayPal item, which is fine because I set that PayPal item to go to the correct membership income account. So I'm good to go there. Oh, zoomed too much there. And similarly, that same transaction had an expense associated with it, so I can drill in and I've got the expenses. So no matter how I choose to look at my books, just having dropped in, I see that data's been flowing, I see the details have been coming in. And most importantly, once a month I have to give a report to the board of directors, I have to report to the membership on the status of the nonprofit. So the statement of activity, the statement of financial position, they're up to date. My membership dues income of $8,115 is up to date and accurate as of the day that I drop in there. That's huge for me. I really only have to drop in here once a month before the board meeting, generate these reports, email them out to the board, and then we talk through them in the board meeting the next day. Huge.
Great. So the fourth takeaway is to perform end-to-end testing to make sure the flow of your app is behaving as expected from start to finish. The purpose is that you can identify system dependency and also maintain data integrity among various components.
Yep. And so a lot of what I just covered in my user experience with QuickBooks is what we need to cover in the end-to-end testing. So I'll typically sit with the QA engineers and we'll walk through all the different types of transactions that can happen in the integration system, PayPal in this case, and what I expect to see in QuickBooks as a result from the reporting perspective, from the transaction perspective. So everything I just walked you through in terms of what reports I expect to see, what transactions I expect to see, that's what I go through with the QA engineers to make sure that we have a common understanding of what should be happening. And even though I've spent the last 13 years working with QuickBooks, and I know how QuickBooks does accounting pretty well, there are still situations that come up where I'm not really sure. Now, how should we track that? Gift cards on an e-commerce site, for example. How should you track that? So in those cases, I have a couple of pro advisors I worked with for many years working with partners. So I've got them on speed dial. I'll call them up and I'll say, so this situation came up. How would you handle that? And what transactions would you expect to see in QuickBooks? And so I'll do that, and then I'll convey that information over to the QA team as well and make sure that we've defined exactly the way that integration should work for our accountants, our small businesses, and ourselves.
So my fifth takeaway, Peter already mentioned it. So basically, make sure if you have any questions, make sure you check in with the accountant or pro advisors to get expert advice to see if your solution is valid for our business, small business users. So as you can see, we have learned quite a few lessons along the way, and we will continue to work with our customers and strategic developers to drive our platform forward and to enabling you and our internal teams to deliver the best user experiences. Thank you, and Rajeshri, you want to come back? Let us know if you have any questions.